So glad you can join us. Here's what we have for you this Tuesday. Ottawa attempts to bridge the gap with the U.S. over a critical trade route.
I explained that Canada, of course, paid for the construction of the bridge.
How border towns and businesses are reacting to Donald Trump's latest threat.
Any American across the country with any knowledge of this suspect to please call the FBI.
Unsettling doorbell images of a suspect in the Nancy Guthrie case.
A smooth trip down here has turned into a sort of disruptive return.
Plus, how Canadian tourists are navigating travel turbulence in Cuba.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
It will be sorted out. Prime Minister Mark Carney's comment after an early morning phone call with the U.S. president. Donald Trump is threatening to block the opening of a major trade corridor between Windsor and Detroit unless the U.S. is fully compensated. The thing is, the bridge is publicly owned by Canada and the state of Michigan. CTV's senior political correspondent Mike Couture on the brouhaha over a bridge and the false claims. Mike.
Well, Sandy, Prime Minister Mark Carney said he explained a number of things to President Donald Trump about the Gordie Howe Bridge, including who built it and who's owed any money for it.
Canada, of course, paid for the construction of the bridge, over $4 billion.
Prime Minister Carney said he laid out that fact to President Trump in an early morning call that he described as positive. He also cleared up Trump's misconception about the construction of the span.
Obviously, there's Canadian steel, Canadian workers, but also U.S. steel, U.S. workers that are involved. This is a great example of cooperation between our countries.
Ownership of the bridge is clearly spelled out according to the 2017 agreement. The crossing will be publicly owned jointly by Canada and Michigan. Yet Trump's officials insist there are issues.
There's a question as to the proceeds of tolls, et cetera, and so there's going to be a negotiation on that front into how that bridge should be treated. If it's going to be going into the U.S.
According to the agreement, Canada will collect tolls until it recoups the costs related to construction. After that, they're split between Canada and Michigan. One former ambassador says there's a reason the president gets things so wrong.
You've got a bunch of crackpot advisors in the White House who misinform the president, who already likes to have tantrums and lash out and try to get leverage or extort things.
In Trump's online tirade, he also took aim at the Ontario ban on American alcohol, which the premier says won't change.
It's obviously working. It's an irritant. But there's one thing President Trump can do: get rid of Canadian tariffs.
Now, it's unclear if tariffs were discussed on the call, but Prime Minister Carney did say the president asked his ambassador to Canada and Michigan native Pete Hoekstra to continue the conversation and bridge the apparent gap. Sandy?
Thank you, Mike. And joining us from Ottawa, CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelas. Okay, Vashi, the Prime Minister appears to be trying to lower the temperature. The two men were told, even talking about hockey during the morning phone call. Will it work?
Yeah, I think that's the big question, and sort of two different ways to answer it today. First, it seems to have worked somewhat in that, there are efforts, as Mike indicated, for the U.S. ambassador to Canada to attempt to smooth things over, even using the verbiage that might be possible. I think gives us an indication that, like other threats Trump has made over the past few months, this one could materialize into something far less than what he is threatening. On the other hand, you have his closest delegate speaking to the press, his press secretary today, doubling down on all the falsities they're putting forward about a lack of American, for example, involvement or ability to generate income from that bridge. So two sides of the same coin, which is often the case with Trump, but certainly a lot of effort on the Canadian government's part to distill things to a calmer place.
Okay, but if this doesn't go away, how serious a problem is this for Canada, happening as negotiations for the new trade deal are coming up?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Sandy, in that this is something part of a greater context, right? I thought it was very interesting in this post that Donald Trump talked about restarting negotiations at all. Remember, they've been done since October. He wants us to keep talking on this issue, on others. Maybe that's not the worst thing, Sandy.
Okay, Vashi, thank you as always. Now, of course, one of the goals behind the Gordie Howe Bridge, as we've been saying, is to facilitate the movement of commerce, trade between the two countries. We asked CTV's Adrian Gobriel to find out how businesses are reacting to Donald Trump's threats. Adrian.
Sandy, the soon-to-be-completed Gordie Howe Bridge stretches 2.5 kilometers. Though President Donald Trump's most recent threat has some industry leaders here in Windsor, Ontario, concerned that the path towards economic progress could take a detour. Spanning the Detroit River, North America's longest cable-stayed bridge has promised to be a major economic driver.
This bridge will open. It's fully constructed.
Though some industry leaders are concerned that the political speed bump placed by President Donald Trump could at least temporarily derail the path towards future economic prosperity.
There's been a lot of uncertainty over the past year and a bit, and they want that certainty to return and business to get back to normal.
Nicole Vlanich, the executive director of the Canadian Association of Mold Makers, says the U.S. president's bluster doesn't surprise her, even though Trump has previously supported the project. This joint statement released by President Trump and then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in February 2017 says that we look forward to the expeditious completion of the Gordie Howe International Bridge, which will also serve as a vital economic link between our two countries.
It's right. I mean, it is vital. I think we need the second bridge. It's been talked about for over 20 years why it's needed.
The bridge is expected to increase the current $1 billion per day in trade that flows through the Windsor-Essex region and create a more direct route for trucking companies often stuck in a bottleneck along the old Ambassador Bridge.
The hope is that this bridge will help alleviate that congestion and allow things to move quicker and everybody to be more productive.
Vlanich says she's hopeful that with negotiations now reopened by the U.S., a clearer path will be paved for economic growth on both sides of the border. Some business leaders here, as well as local politicians, believe that the Gordie Howe Bridge is simply being used as leverage by President Trump as he pushes forward his America First agenda. Sandy.
All right, Adrian in Windsor, Ontario. Adrian, thank you. Michigan's governor was asked about Donald Trump's threat today, and here's what she had to say.
The Canadians have paid for the bridge. The bridge was built with organized labor, union labor on both sides of the bridge, including Michiganders. It is a really important part of our economy.
Gretchen Whitmer says she has spoken to Canadian officials about Trump's remarks, but hasn't spoken directly with the U.S. president yet. Okay, a big development in the case of the missing mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. The FBI has released 4 daunting images and video of a masked and armed intruder appearing to tamper with Nancy Guthrie's front door camera. Law enforcement authorities are hoping someone will recognize him. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon now on the valuable lead and the plea for help to the public. Joy.
Sandy, this is the first and so far best lead in the search for Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie. But the family says they don't recognize the person in those images. The images are chilling. Outside Nancy Guthrie's home, a masked intruder is trying to cover up the doorbell camera in the early morning hours of February 1st. The person is wearing a ski mask and black gloves, carrying a backpack and tools, wearing a weapon in his belt. FBI Director Kash Patel says the images show an armed individual appearing to have tampered with the camera at Nancy Guthrie's front door the morning of her disappearance. The doorbell camera was removed, but police were able to recover this key digital evidence.
Even though these cameras might have been disconnected, they're always recording and uploading most likely images and video to the cloud. And through digital forensics, it seems that they were able to recover video.
It's the break investigators needed in their agonizing search for the elderly mom. Heartbreaking messages from the family have gone from hopeful to desperate, pleading for the public's help.
If you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation, and we need your help.
The FBI also put up missing persons billboards in dozens of cities. Guthrie was dropped off at her home near Tucson the night of January 31st and reported missing the next day. The Guthrie family believes their mother is still out there. Ransom notes sent to media outlets demanded $6 million in cryptocurrency. But as the deadline passed, some question if the notes were even real.
The remarkable video released today is the biggest clue yet in this case that has gripped America. Sandy?
Okay, Joy, thank you. A top member of U.S. President Trump's cabinet is seeking to distance himself from an appearance in the Jeffrey Epstein files. At a Senate hearing today, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was asked to explain a lunch with Epstein at the sex offender's private island in 2012, years after he claimed to have cut off ties.
My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island.
Lutnick previously claimed he vowed never to be in a room with Epstein again following an uncomfortable interaction in 2005. Lutnick now faces calls from both Republicans and Democrats to resign. Well, the blockade of Venezuelan oil by the Americans has led to fuel shortages in Cuba and forced Canadian airlines to wind down flights to the Caribbean island and wind up evacuation efforts. CTV's Rahim Ladani is at Toronto's Pearson Airport with an update on the situation. Hi, Rahim.
Sandy, I spoke with one gentleman who's in Cuba right now, and he says that at his resort, there are no food shortages, there are no power outages, and so he is still enjoying his vacation, and he doesn't plan to cut it short. He's expected to arrive back in Toronto on Thursday. Now, that is not the case for all travelers, we know, and that is why a number of airlines, Air Canada, WestJet, and Air Transat, they are sending planes down to Cuba right now, not full of travelers, but empty, with one goal: to pick up and repatriate Canadian travelers back here to the country. I spoke with an Air Canada representative who told me that this wind down of operations could take between 5 to 10 days because they don't want vacationers to have to cut their trip short unless, of course, they want to. They can then call the airline and change their flight if there is availability at no charge. Air Canada says they have about 3,000 passengers that they need to bring back, while Global Affairs Canada says there are 7,200 Canadians who are registered in Cuba. That number of people in Cuba is very much likely higher because not everyone registers when they go down for a vacation. This continues to be a very fluid situation in Cuba. All of the airlines tell me that when they go down there, they are bringing their own fuel supply to have enough for the return trip, so they are not relying on the local reserves in the economy right now. We know that from all the airlines, they say that this is not going to be a 1 to 2 week stoppage of travel down to Cuba. They are going to be stopping it from the end of April to early May. And so it's basically the entire winter travel season down to Cuba, which will be halted because of what's unfolding there right now. Anyone who has trips, they will be refunded. But we also spoke with a travel agent who says this is a prime example of where trip cancellation insurance can come in handy, because while your flight may be reimbursed, if you had booked for a tour, that could be out of pocket. Sandy.
All right. Thank you, Rahim. Remarkable scenes out of Georgia, where a small plane made an emergency landing on a busy street. Dramatic video shows a small plane streaking towards the road, touching down and slamming into cars before coming to a stop. The aircraft had just taken off and was trying to turn back when it developed engine trouble. 2 pilots and a student were on board, and remarkably, no one was seriously injured. And no soft landing for Canada's real estate market. That is coming up.
A slower market for the next several years.
The factors behind plummeting prices and what lies ahead. The housing market in Canada is being dragged down by economic uncertainty, and the proof is a new report by the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. It forecasts higher building costs, fewer new homes built, and more existing units left unsold. CTV's Heather Wright looks into this story for us. Okay, Heather, is this a doom and gloom scenario?
Well, Sandy, another report underscoring the economic challenges facing Canadians. And while the softening real estate market is good news for first-time home buyers, the declining housing starts in a country that needs more inventory could mean problems down the road.
The headwinds facing Canada's economy are being felt by Canada's housing industry as well.
The general climate environment of uncertainty that has been brought about by the trade tensions and the uncertainty going forward has definitely impacted housing investment.
According to the Housing Market Outlook released today by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, new home construction is set to decline through 2028 as developers face high costs, weaker demand, and more unsold homes. Condo construction is expected to be especially weak. The CMHC report also underscores the impact elevated unemployment, modest income growth, and slowing population growth are having on the housing market.
Several factors that are spelling out a slower market for the next several years.
While new condo construction is expected to remain high in Montreal, the CMHC predicts a dismal condo market in both Vancouver and Toronto, where inventory is high and sales are weak.
A seller of a new build, you're looking at a full deposit forfeit.
Daniel Zadigan is a realtor who says sellers are losing deposits and then some when trying to sell condos they bought pre-construction 4 or 5 years ago, when prices were high and interest rates were low. But he says the oversupply won't last forever, and the lack of starts will create new problems down the road.
Long term, however, the lack of housing starts is at one point going to show its impact, maybe in a few years, because I know starting next year, I think the housing starts, completions, are going to really start to dramatically taper off.
The CMHC says Canada needs an additional 3.5 million homes to restore affordability by 2030, a goal becoming increasingly difficult to hit. Sandy.
All right, CTV's Heather Wright. The federal government plans to spend $84 million for a surge of electric vehicle charging ports across the country. Ottawa wants to add 8,000 new chargers. Canada currently has about 30,000. It's part of a federal auto strategy announced last week that includes a $1.5 billion jolt for electric vehicle infrastructure. The strategy includes an EV rebate program, an end to the EV sales mandate, and stricter emission standards for the auto sector. Still ahead, a warning about using digital tools instead of doctors. The health hazard of relying on AI for medical advice. You're not alone if you're going to AI for information on your health. A new survey from the Canadian Medical Association says roughly half of us are using the tool and often getting bad advice. CTV's John Venavalle-Rao now on the warning about the harm of false or misleading content. John.
Sandy, Canadians are increasingly turning to AI to solve their own health problems, and the new survey finds that could be harming some of them.
Here's what you can do using ChatGPT.
Online, there's long been plenty of hype.
ChatGPT is now better than your doctor.
About how AI chatbots can diagnose medical problems. A quick consult that's free and easy.
Honestly, I think it's really good. I would place a lot of trust in the answers it gives me.
But the Canadian Medical Association sounding the alarm, warning consulting an AI for medical advice can be dangerous, especially if a patient delays or skips seeing a human doctor.
I would suggest that they need to be extremely curious and cautious, and that the best is still to see their family physician or primary care provider or specialist.
In a new survey of 5,000 Canadians, around half said they'd consulted with either Google AI or ChatGPT for health information. But the survey also found those following AI health advice were 5 times more likely to report health-related harms compared to those who didn't.
The harms tend to be delay in diagnosis or side effects from the treatment.
I think it's pretty good at some things, but there are some inaccuracies.
Some are concerned patients are turning to AI chatbots because of the shortage of family doctors. In fact, more than half who got information online said they had to because a walk-in clinic or doctor weren't available. But experts say an AI can confidently state something untrue and lacks a full patient history.
AI doesn't know them as a full person in their context, whereas I do as a family doctor. I know that they actually had this other symptom last year that they forgot to mention to AI.
And it turns out many are skeptical of AI responses. Only 1 in 4 in this survey say they trust it to provide accurate health information.
Okay.
Sandy.
Good information, John. Thank you. And a warning to those who use blood pressure medication to check your meds, as a mix-up has led to a nationwide recall. Health Canada says 2 batches of 5 milligram tablets of maramlodipine are being recalled, as some bottles may contain the wrong drug. The correct tablets have 8 sides, are white to off-white in color, and have the numbers 210 and 5 printed on them. If your bottle contains any round or unusual tablets, of course, don't take them and return them to the pharmacy. After the break, on track to the podium. Setbacks and triumphs in Team Canada's quest for glory. Canada got off to a fast start on day 4 of the Winter Games, capturing a silver medal in the short track speed skating mixed relay. A proud moment for the team, and it marks Canada's 3rd medal of the Milan-Cortina Games and the first silver.
It was actually the one where I kind of missed in Beijing. We came close, and like on the so close to the podium in Beijing, so it kind of feels special just coming back here and just getting ourselves on the podium.
But it was a tough day for Canada's women's hockey team against their arch rivals, the Americans. The U.S. dominated the highly anticipated matchup, winning 5-0. The Canadians were shorthanded, missing their captain, Marie-Philippe Poulin, who sat out the game after suffering a lower body injury in Monday's win over Czechia. Now, that game was one of many competitions going late into the night. It's because organizers are pushing back event start times for TV viewers in North America. CTV's Garrett Barry is in Milan with that angle.
Tonight is a night that hockey fans here in Milan have had circled on their calendars for quite some time. But there's something else notable on the tickets, the 8:10 start time. Tonight's game is one of many, especially here in Milan, that start well after dark. It's not unusual for events to start at 8, 9, even 10 o'clock at night and finish even later. Those late starts and finishes have been an adjustment for athletes competing on the ice.
You try not to look at your clock when you get back, but we did a great job coming into the village when we were in Lugano, making sure that we were kind of adjusting ourselves and staying up later than normal. I would say that usually, especially my roommates, they're probably going to bed usually a little bit earlier than 11:30, but when you know that you're going to be on the ice till that time, you don't really want your body to get into that rhythm.
We got a chance today to ask Olympic organizers about these scheduling choices. They say this is a conversation that happens during every games, but the later starts here in Milan allow more people in North America and around the world to watch events live. So to spread the Olympic message, they said it's a worthy move to change routines. Garrett Barry, CTV News in Milan.
All right, thanks for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandra Rinaldo. Bye for now. We'll see you tomorrow, we hope.